Okay, so this is the Abnormal Psychology Project, and I looked at Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh. So a little bit about him. He's a young boy, he's probably around 6 to 8 years old, although it isn't explicitly stated how old he is. He's actually based off of A.A. Milne, the author's actual son, Christopher Robin, who was about 9 years old. So Christopher Robin receives Winnie the Pooh, originally called Edward Bear, as a gift. And he immediately starts speaking, playing, hanging out with Pooh and 8 other stuffed toys as if they're real characters. And he goes on adventures in them in the 100-acre woods. And each toy, each character has their own personality and life. So what are some symptoms that Christopher Robin displays? So he has a very irrational fear of bears at our first introduction to him. Delusions of stuffed animals becoming alive, and hallucinations of toys being alive. So the delusions. So he believes these inanimate objects, these stuffed toys, are alive. I mean, like I said, they hold conversation, they move, they eat, they have living souls, they're living beings. And they each have distinct personalities, lives, homes, backstories, families, jobs, etc. And they even interact with each other when he is not present. So delusions are different from hallucinations in the way that he has this deeply rooted belief that they are alive and live even when he is not there to physically hallucinate them moving. And so the DSM definition of a delusion is a false belief based on incorrect inference about external reality that is firmly sustained despite what almost everyone else believes and despite what constitutes incontrovertible and obvious proof or evidence to the contrary. And so he definitely displays delusions. And then hallucinations. I just went into something a little bit like this, but hallucinations are an experience involving the apparent perception of something not present. So, like I was explaining how hallucinations and illusions are different, hallucinations are him actually having interactions and physically seeing, feeling, or hearing these toys move, speak, and touch him. And so he actually hallucinates the touch of the stuffed animal. And while the stuffed animal may be sitting, laying on the ground, he might hallucinate it getting up, walking over to him, and then actually feel the tactile touch of it touching his arm. And then phobias. This one is a little bit more into his backstory, but in the first poem Christopher Robin is introduced to us, he talks about how he is excessively afraid of bears, to the extent that he refuses to step on the lines in the pavement and only walks on the center of the blocks on the pavement. And this limits his life because he refuses to go down certain paths if they have too many cracks or too many lines, because he feels that the bears that wait around the corner are going to eat him if he steps on the cracks. And so this displays a little bit of OCD tendencies, but not enough to warrant an actual diagnosis, just a very low spectrum. That is one of the symptoms. And he believes that those who do not share the excessive fear are sillies. That's a direct quote from the poem. And so the DSM definition of a phobia is a marked and persistent fear that is excessive or unreasonable, cued by the presence or anticipation of a specific object or situation, which is flying, heights, animals, receiving ejection, seeing blood, or in this case, bears. So what are the progression of his symptoms? So arachnophobia, which is the fear of bears I was just speaking about. I put this one first because I find this is the most interesting and one people don't really talk about. So he displays this heightened fear of bears like I just went into, and he actually ends up overcoming this fear, which is why I feel like a lot of people do not talk about it, is that he overcomes this fear within a few weeks or days of getting Pooh Bear. And so it's very odd that you would see a kid with arachnophobia playing and loving this stuffed bear when he is extremely afraid of bears. And so he's overcome this fear, obviously, and he is overcome through increased exposure and systematic desensitization, which is Pooh Bear. So Pooh, progressively, he becomes comfortable around him after receiving him as a gift. So the result of this is he no longer displays an unreasonable fear of bear. His phobia is cured. And later on in a poem, still in A. Maline's first work, he goes to the zoo and sees a caged bear and is not afraid in the slightest bit, because he has overcome this fear with the help of Pooh. And so hallucinations and delusions. I put these together because they're very, very similar, but like I said earlier, they are distinctly different. So with hallucinations, he progressively gets worse, but he begins hallucinating from his first interaction with the toys. So within the first day of receiving these toys, he is seeing them move. Only a little bit. He sees Pooh Bear fall off the table and then sit back up. Whereas weeks later into having these toys and being around them, his hallucinations have gotten to the point where he may see Pooh Bear fall and then see Pooh Bear sit up, walk around, and talk to him. And so they just progressively get more and more complex to the point where he is hallucinating Pooh's house, different personality traits, different things about him, pretty much everything about his daily life. And then eventually he has these full-on 100% day-long adventures, and I say adventures in quotations, because he is out in the forest, or he's hallucinating being in the forest, with all of these animals that should not be moving and should not be talking and should not be with him, and he is seeing them. And then delusions. Like I said earlier, he has delusions of the toys being alive and being living beings. And he thinks like this from the moment he receives these bears. Well, this bear and the rest of the toys. And they progress from just the toys are alive to the toys are alive. They have their own houses, jobs, families, backstories, personalities, distinct personality traits. And so both the hallucinations and the delusions progressively get more intense, complex, and more commonly thought and more commonly seen as the weeks and months go on. So I diagnosed him with schizophrenia, which is an odd diagnosis for such a young child, as schizophrenia usually appears from the ages of 16 to 30. It's more common in females, but there are cases of young children having schizophrenia, having hallucinations, delusions, and being diagnosed as young as 5 or 6 years old. And so I don't think it's that far of a stretch for Christopher Robin to be exhibiting schizophrenia or schizophrenic signs by this age. And about 1% of the global population is diagnosed, but around 1.2% of the U.S. population has diagnosed schizophrenia. So it's a little bit more common in the U.S., but remember also, these are only people that are diagnosed, and there are lots of people that are not diagnosed that are living not knowing that they have schizophrenia. And so what are some causes of this disorder? And so for schizophrenia, the causes are very hazy. We don't know exactly what causes it. It's not like depression where you can pinpoint, sometimes you can pinpoint an exact place where the trauma caused the disorder to begin. Instead, there are a lot of different factors that we all think tie in together. So some biological factors could be chemical imbalances in the brain. Studies have shown that dopamine receptors are a lot more prevalent in schizophrenic patients' brains, and that dopamine is a lot more common and fired much more often So a lot of schizophrenic drugs actually suppress dopamine. But it could also be a physical injury to the brain or genetics. You have, I believe it was around a 1 in 100 chance of having schizophrenia normally. But if you have a parent with schizophrenia, that goes up to a 1 in 10%. And if you have an identical twin with schizophrenia, that is a 1 in 5, no, not 1 in 5, a 5 out of 10 chance, so 1 out of 2 chance that you're going to have schizophrenia. Some other possible factors, again, this is stuff that we just really do not know very much of. It could be linked to malnutrition in the womb, complications with birth, or intense childhood trauma. But, like I said, we really just do not know. And because of that, not enough is known about schizophrenia and about Christopher Robin's life to correctly determine a direct cause for this disorder for him personally. And so I have a short video, well, it's not a short video, but I do have a video that plays, and it talks about the schizophrenic spectrum, which I didn't go into too much detail here, but the part about the schizophrenic spectrum is at 1 minute and 31 seconds to about 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I can't play it right here, but you are more than welcome to go watch it on your own. It's Crash Course Biology, episode 32, Schizophrenia and Dissociative Disorders. And so thank you very much for listening. Thank you for bearing with me with my presentation. And here are my works cited. There are a lot of really good sources in here. Who and the Psychologist is a book that I read for this. I would highly, highly recommend it for anyone that is interested in what I talked about. It's incredibly, incredibly thoughtful, thought-provoking, very good book. And thank you for listening.